agenda, so we'll make a hard press to get through as quickly and as accurately as possible. So, at any rate, the first order of business is to have a roll call. You call us in, please.
Brian?
Here.
Tyler?
Here.
Kim will be absent tonight. John?
Here.
And Deb? Here.
Thank you. Entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
I have a second.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Stands approved. For public forum, I understand we have some jump rope for heart recognition this evening. Would those folks please come forward?
Well, I'm Chris Shives. I'm the Regional Vice President for the American Heart Association. I was very fortunate to be here with you guys last year about this time. This is one of my favorite parts of my job, is to come and recognize our volunteers and the students at these schools. So, we have three objectives when we do Jump Rope for Heart. So number one is, how the kids can help their own hearts. So in PE class, they learn a lot about things that they can do to keep their hearts healthy as they grow older. And our goal as the American Heart Association is to get them to the age of 18 without any risk factors of cardiovascular disease, and they're much less likely to hit the age of 50 with any signs of heart disease. So that's number one. Number two is how they help others. And we have two outstanding students that are actually the tops in their school in fundraising. So one of the things we learn is, the kids learn at an early age of giving back and helping others. And hopefully as they get older, they can do that in their communities. So I've got a couple awards that I want to give to these two. So this is for Brock. Brock was the top student at Gilbert Elementary. Brock told me he's in 2nd grade and playing soccer right now. So we want to give that to you, Brock. And then the other one was for LJ Hernandez, who was actually the top student at Gilbert Intermediate School. And I looked really quickly, and LJ actually raised $1,005 this year, which put him 27th in the state of Iowa out of 25,000 students that did fundraising. So pretty crazy to see in the top, at 99th percentile. So LJ, thank you so much for everything. And the last one is, for Stephanie, who is so I have about 900 schools that I work with across the state of Nebraska, about 2/3 of the state of Iowa, and I can't think of a better volunteer we have for us. So Gilbert Elementary and Intermediate finished 10th in the state of Iowa out of 500 schools. And one of the really neat things this year is we asked each kid that registers to take a heart healthy pledge. And we had 172 different students this year join our SCARE squad. They're our theme this year, that they took a healthy pledge during Jump Rope for Heart, where they're either going to be physically active for 60 minutes a day, eat a fruit or vegetable with every meal, or choose water over a sugary drink. So that all starts in PE class that filters down. So we just appreciate Gilbert Community School District for everything you guys do for us to help us save more lives, and obviously Stephanie and her leadership, what she does. And we're lucky to call her a volunteer for the Heart Association. So thank you very much.
Stacy got pies in the face. Stacy Edwards got pies in the face, and Mrs. Griffin got silly stringed. I don't see them in here, but we can recognize them for their efforts in that attempt as well. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Hey, LJ, I think Mayor Pop might recruit you to do some fundraising for the bike trip. That's pretty impressive. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming in. The Therapy Dot program.
Yep.
Jordan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
My name is Jordan Setsma. I'm the student support coordinator for grades 6 through 12 here at Gilbert. And I'm kind of proposing a therapy dog program for next year. I'm going to go to the next slide. This is my dog Bailey. She's a 5-year-old golden retriever boxer mix. We actually adopted her a year ago from a family who was doing in-home daycare. They moved, husband works on the road, just really weren't able to give her all the love and attention that they needed to. So we actually ended up adopting her. So she would be kind of the one that would be coming to school with me every day. So just to give a little background, what is pet therapy or animal assisted therapy? It includes any type of therapy with animals, not just dogs, and it's also designed to help promote improvement in physical, social, emotional, and or cognitive functioning, which I think is really important, like I said, and why I think this school would be the perfect place for this kind of program. So kind of the goals that I'd be working on with Bailey at the school would be to improve those fine motor skills. We especially think of our level 3 room, just the simple act of petting, comfort, Bailey, learning basic commands like shake or teaching her different hand signals. It'll also increase those verbal interactions with students, and increases those attention skills, staying on task, hopefully reduce some anxiety and increase motivation. I know in other school counselors, specifically Newton that I've been talking to, a lot of kids will just come in to see the dog and then end up having some really meaningful conversation with the counselor. It kind of opens up those doors for those staff interactions. So the difference between a service dog and a therapy dog is that Bailey would not be providing any service directly related to a student or individual's disability. That's really the main difference. This was just kind of some more background information, but Bailey will be trained specifically as a therapy dog. Not able, some people use their dog for diabetes or other things, so it wouldn't be used for that. And she is not protected under ADA, whereas a service dog would be. That's kind of the legal piece on there. So the certification process is a very lengthy one. She would start out, we really are going back to basics with her. Like I said, she's very intelligent. She knows a lot of commands, but I feel really important as they call it a handler, but I'm a dog mom, our owner, is that we really start back to basics. So she'll actually begin at the beginner stage and work all the way through intermediate, advanced, and then she'll go through specific therapy dog training and then have to pass a certification. I also have to pass a certification online, and then we have to pass a certification together. So it's a very lengthy process. The certification has to be renewed every 2 years. We don't have to go through that entire process again, just performing. Again, they want to make sure that it's good for Bailey. She's enjoying the work that she's doing, because obviously she would be showing signs of stress if it wasn't. And like I said, she'll be wearing an identification saying that she's a therapy dog at all times. I asked a question earlier, is it a vest? It kind of depends what our preference is, but usually just a tag so it doesn't get in the way. Kids trying to pet her and she's wearing this big vest. So liability, I included in my proposal a copy of my insurance, but she is covered under my insurance for up to $500,000 per occurrence. When I'm certified through Pet Partners, who is the company I'm going through, she'll receive an additional $2 million in coverage once she's certified, and that's through the entirety that we're in the program. And like I said, that's every 2 years that's renewed. So cost, I'm responsible for all veterinary care, making sure her shots are up to date. The cost of training is solely on me, so going through all of those different classes, which is pretty lengthy. The school has no financial responsibility at all for this program. It's strictly on me as the owner. Some allergy concerns. In the proposal, I included a letter from our school nurse, because I've looked into this really heavily as a person who also has allergies. I think it's really important that we're looking at the entire student body and kind of their concerns. So she'll be bathed weekly in a hypoallergenic shampoo, carpet vacuum daily, keep one of those little vacuums in my office. I can offer an alternative meeting spot for anyone who is allergic or they just aren't comfortable with dogs. That's more than fine. We have plenty of place in the high school and middle school for me to do that. She will be confined to certain areas of the building that are not associated with food preparation, so obviously not hanging out in study hall in the cafeteria, kids are eating there. Like I said, in the high school and in the middle school, the food prep areas are completely blocked off, so that's not a concern. She will be on a loose leash at all times. She can't just be roaming down the hallways, so she'll always be with me on a loose leash. I won't keep a dog bed in my office or anything, nothing to really collect that pet dander. And I can also get a HEPA air filter to be put in the office, just a little corner one to also help with air purification as well if necessary. So kind of how I would like to implement this at Gilbert is greeting some students at the door, just really being that friendly face, building those relationships when we start the program, assist in building those relationships, offer support for students, anxiety, depression, that's something that we're really trying to address. And also offer support in the adaptive learning classroom as well as adaptive PE. In your proposal, you'll also find a letter of support from Cheryl Moss, who is our adaptive learning teacher, as well as Graham Lott, who works with adaptive PE. But just to have her, be involved in their classroom and really build that relationship, I think would be really important. So, this program probably wouldn't start until after Christmas. By the time like I said, every class I go through is 6 weeks, and it's a lot of classes. So it wouldn't be until probably the start of the new year. I would be sending out information to parents and students, obviously letting them know that this program was going to be starting, and address any concerns we had, a fear of dogs, anything like that. And that's kind of part of the training process, because they help work through how to introduce safely all of those things. And like I said, providing that education and introduction piece during Success Center, just having an intro and really teaching the dogs teaching the students that what her job is, what that looks like, what she's here to do, and what she isn't as well. Thank you. So there's a picture of Bailey as well. So, do you have any questions for me?
Go ahead, you sir.
Oh, go ahead.
First, thanks for all the research in the background. This is really good. Are there other schools that you've had a chance to talk to that have implemented this, and what are some of the issues that have come up or any concerns that way?
So Newton is one of those schools I've been talking really close with. I know Mr. Vanderpool had one at Fort Dodge. They had really great success with that. Another one I've talked to is a school out in Council Bluffs. The main thing, and I think that's why I provided so much information on it, was allergies, just because that's obviously kind of a growing issue. But the certification process is so long and very intense that it kind of provides the educational piece. Like I said, for myself, I have to go through a course as well. And I think that way I can teach students kind of how to pet a dog, signs of distress, or how to teach her different things to kind of interact with them better. But I think allergies was the #1 thing, and that's why I kind of delved into that so much, just to make sure. I just want every student to be comfortable. I don't want students to not come in and see me because I have a dog. And like I said, she wouldn't be with me full time. It wouldn't be every day. It'd be on a pretty part-time basis, and that's just for the benefit of Bailey. I mean, I live in Ankeny, so 40-minute drive, and then being at school all day, that's quite a bit. So she'd probably be with me only part-time as well.
So you have, which is again good research from Laura, the nurse, about some specific students that have allergies.
Yeah.
So how would...
So just reaching out to them individually, reaching out to their parents as well, talking about what their needs are, what we can do to be proactive. Like I said, Mr. Jacobson and I would have separate, our offices are in different rooms, so just always making sure I'm accommodating that student. And once I know who they are, that becomes very easy to do. But that's why I included all that information with the nurse, so I knew, okay, if we have a ton of kids who are allergic to dogs, is this going to be the best thing for our school?
I think that kind of addresses a few of the questions that I had. And you answered them about it just being kind of a part-time thing.
Right.
So I think it sounds really interesting. I don't have experience with it myself, but is it the kind of thing where when Bailey was with you, then Bailey has to be by you all the time, or is it kind of a thing where
Yeah, so
usually
I'm,
go around? You know, I'm just
Yeah.
wondering, like, is that part of your attention then has to be on handling Bailey versus,
right, so like if we were in a room like this, she could be,
like,
she would honestly just be laying down, like kind of by my feet.
Yeah.
In meetings, she could do that as well, but that's to control interactions as well as that's why she'd always be on a loose leash, because if a student was scared or kind of got spooked easily, then I would know that I have control of the dog. It's more of a safety than anything else. But yeah, like I said, in a closed off room like this, she would just be hanging out, you know.
That's cool. Yeah, thank you. I do know that.
And like I said, in a classroom, she could be walking around too. As long I just don't, you know, she's not going to be wandering down in the office while I'm,
Yeah.
you know, on the other side of the building. She'll always be in the same vicinity as me.
George, we ran through with our insurance agent a list of questions that they threw at you, and then you answered those back, and I think that they were satisfied with the answers. But just so that the board knows, it isn't something that we haven't at least looked into that portion of it too. I don't know that we'll have to worry about that, but we just wanted to make sure that we had the bases covered.
Yeah. Yeah, because we started looking into this process around January sometime. Like I said, we want to make sure we got in contact with the school's insurance, my insurance, which is why I included my insurance proof of it, so that I do have the coverage. It's just really important for me to do this right and to do this and what's best for our students and what's best for my dog as well. I don't want to implement something in our schools that isn't fully ready, fully trained, fully certified, so that's really important to me.
And maybe this is a question for everyone here, but then do we have like it sounds like you went through a lot of work to figure out and research and, this met the requirements, et cetera, but do we have any kind of a policy, or do we have any kind of, would we expect some kind of a repeatable process? So if someone else were to have an idea of a different kind of a therapy animal, maybe different. Obviously you mentioned, you've gone through the certification, et cetera, but is there anything like that we have to consider, or is anything in place? I don't know.
I don't know that we have anything for a therapy dog, but I would have to look into
Or
it.
any
Or
type
any
of
type of
animal.
animal.
Anything, not just a therapy dog, but I've got 2 guinea pigs.
Yeah, because there's definitely a difference between like, my sister as a student, I will say has an emotional support animal. That's that you don't have to have certification for. You don't have
ADA,
to,
right?
right, but
Yeah.
you don't have to have anything like that. You have to have a note from your doctor to have that. Whereas a therapy dog, they're trained, they're certified, they have to go through evaluations. I can't just bring my dog just to school with me. So I think that's just a really important distinction that,
And you've done the work. I just mean, like, what do we have in
Right.
place so that the next person that comes along will say, this is what Jordan did. These are the steps that you would go through to ensure it. That's the question I'm asking, I guess.
Do we have any policy?
Do we have a policy or just
Yeah.
ISB has not released any policies,
Okay.
but that's not saying that somebody has a policy
Yeah.
out there that we should consider.
Yeah. You've done a great job. I would just hope that we would expect everybody to do that.
Yeah.
Same kind of thing, to
Yeah.
come through, but that's all I have, I guess.
Any other questions? Well, thank you for presenting.
Thank you. There are additional proposals up here if anybody wants to get them as well.
So then, I'm sorry, but is this just, it's gonna happen, right?
We would have to
didn't
have
need
it as
any-
an agenda item and then visit.
Once you have, just before it
Yep.
happens or something like
Yeah,
that.
so
we do
once
that. Okay.
once she goes through the certification process, she's all done, then I would bring it back
Okay.
to the board. But I just didn't want to jump into it without knowing, putting all the information out there, making sure the legal and insurance side was there, before spending
Yeah.
all the money to go through it. And the board was like, absolutely not. So,
Yeah, no, I was just
Yeah.
curious from my perspective, like, is it just an awareness thing?
Yeah.
Or do we have to do something? So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jordan.
So let's see, I know we got a couple other presenters for public forum. John, would you like to present on the bike trail?
Sure I can. John Pop, the Mayor Gilbert. I just wanted to update you on the bike trail project. For those who don't know, the bike trail's cost was about $300,000. That the county partnered with us to cover half of that, so we were left with the balance of $150,000. And once it was determined we would not use school funds to to support this, the balance fell on us to make this happen from donations. We did come up with matching money, so every dollar goes twice as far. And as of today, the balance of that 150, if you take in the matching account numbers, is we still need $23,601. So I wanted to thank, there's many people in the community that have already contributed and participated in that. The 5 Gilbert City Council members, all of the Gilbert City employees have. 2 different Gilbert area bike rides have contributed. Both the GAR and the Bragg rides have contributed. The Gilbert Women's Sorority Service Sorority has contributed. The Gilbert Lions Club has contributed both last year and this year to a total of $2,000. And 2 of the banks have contributed. First American and First National did today, so we had a little photo opportunity down there today with Scott.
Well, I'm glad you didn't miss it, John.
The other thing I wanted to announce is that Midland Power has stepped up and is going to also contribute $8,500. It's not in that number, so that's coming in if we can get the right people together for a photo op this week. So that will leave a balance of the goal of $15,101. So we'd like to get this wrapped up this month so it can be in this fiscal year. So anything that we can do from the school board's standpoint to support this, or the administration, the 7 people that are on the administration's list, it would be really great. Any way you can contribute, either in spreading the knowledge or financially, that would be wonderful. So with that, that's all I have, unless somebody's got some questions.
No question, but just a couple comments. First, thanks for all of your work on that, John, and Gail and I are happy to support that. Hopefully the rest, and we can get more of the staff to support as well. When we looked at this as far as the school ability to contribute, I think it was actually before we purchased those 4 acres. So one consideration would be whether we could, from the school level, put some money in now that we actually own a small piece that bike path resides on. So it's something I don't think we resolved tonight, but just a thought that I had, because when we looked at that, and Lindsay, and Gail, we looked at that a year ago. I think it was before we purchased those additional acres.
You're right.
So I think the rule at that, or the ruling was, well, we can't contribute because it's not our property, but there is some on our property now. So I would just open that up for the board to consider, but maybe at the next meeting when we can have a little more detail on it, and that could potentially come out of Pebble.
So I'll look into that.
Put that on the agenda for our next meeting if that's permissible. Put it on the agenda for a discussion. You might take that meeting.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
And let's see, Juma, would you like to speak to this?
Well, I had an emergency root canal, so I don't
Oh!
say what I said.
Please stand right in front of the camera.
Very attractive, I'm sure. So, but we do have members from our previous teaching staff, retired, and parents, and a student who would like to share some of their thoughts, if that's okay.
That'd be great.
All right. Who wants to kick it off?
We'll just say Vicky first.
Okay.
Away from the window. Yes.
Oh, boy.
I'm Becky Rice. I taught Spanish at Gilbert for 23 years. I retired 5 years ago. And over those 23 years, I taught the levels 7th and 8th grade and 4 years of high school. I'm not certified to teach elementary. I was not. And so I wanted to talk a little about the elementary program, but I'm going to talk about the culture aspect of it, since that goes over all levels. In every level, we taught culture. Even the students who didn't go beyond the 4 years of exploratory and considering 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th as those years, they took with them 4 years of introduction to another culture, because that was stressed heavily in those 4 years. Culture is one of the 5 national Spanish standards that we use to guide our lesson planning. When we turned in our lesson plans Sunday night, sometimes very late Sunday night, for the coming week, we listed our objectives for classes each day, and we also showed the standard, one of the 5. It was usually several of the 5 standards that we used for each day. It was rarely all of them. That is kind of hard to do. But whenever we used culture, it was a cross-curriculum usage. With geography maybe was involved, or history, or art, both Spanish and, of course, those classes were part of the lesson. The elementary Spanish, or the 7th and 8th, the exploratories, stimulated children's interest, not only the language, interest in the language, but also in the countries that spoke these languages, well, Spanish, and the people who spoke language. So it was the language itself, countries involved, and the people. The awareness of different cultures exists right in our own community, in this school system, and especially in Ames with the university, the student population and the staff population. But these 4 years, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grades, are the years when children become more aware of what goes on beyond their their home area. So they are also looking towards getting information on other cultures. Immigration is one of the greatest problems currently facing many countries around the world. The studying of other languages and cultures has been shown to contribute to a greater understanding of other people, which is basic to working toward a solution to the immigration problem that's been going on for ages. So it's a difficult thing, but culture, understanding other cultures is basic to that. The first 4 years of beginning Spanish helped our young students to develop respect for the cultures and the people who speak different languages. Finally, it's fun to learn about the differences in cultures. The food, the clothing, holidays, things like that are fun to teach and fun for the kids to learn. But probably the more important than that is for teachers to teach the ways in which our cultures are the same. That kids realize that our basic needs are the same. Sustainable food sources. We all need shelter. We all need clothing. And so we can talk about differences, but we need to talk about how they're the same. We all love our families. We all love our homes. And so culture is a very important part of this language education. Our students had an excellent introduction to that, both differences and similarities, as they took those 4 years of exploratory Spanish. And I'm disappointed that the board has chosen to discontinue the study of Spanish or any foreign language, apparently, at the present time. hopefully down the road it will come back, either Spanish or another language. But I feel that it's a real loss to the students that are coming up. Thank you very much. We don't have 30 minutes.
That's why I have notes, otherwise I would be here for half a day. But I'm really going to date myself when I start with this. 39 years ago, I was hired by a school board, a principal, and a superintendent with great vision. They were determined to make this school a very important place where they could flourish. Doug Williams hired me to be a part-time teacher, and I started a program. 7th grade was going to be a quarter, and it was supposed to be exploratory. 8th grade, it was one semester every other day, and it was not obligatory. The kids could choose it, and his hope was that I was going to be able to bring it up to be a Spanish 1, 2, 3, and 4. That very first year, I had the honor to have one student in Spanish 1, and that was Mary Clark. So we got to know each other really well because it was a one-on-one. It broke my heart to learn that Gilbert does not have a 5th and 6th grade program. Gilbert was one of the first 3 schools in the state of Iowa to get a grant to teach elementary foreign language. I tried to talk Doug, and if you knew Doug, it was hard to talk him into anything. I tried to talk him into starting in kindergarten and 1st grade. But he knew that this program was going to start coming up because we had grown the high school and middle school program. So we finally settled on 5th and 6th grade. If you have learned a foreign language, you know that you have to start with the basics, just like in kindergarten. That's why I thought that kindergarten and 1st grade were going to be a better match. You have to start with your colors, your numbers, your family, your clothes, your food, and you have to make it fun for the kids to interact with something like that. We followed it in 6th grade, taking a trip to several countries. We went to Mexico, Costa Rica, Peru, Argentina. They had to come up. We had to get on a plane. We had to get a passport. They had to figure everything out. The trip to the rainforest in Omaha was a highlight for those students. In their PowerPoint presentation, they had to include food, legends, geography, history, math. We taught it around the curriculum with all the 7th grade, 8th, 6th grade teachers. Gilbert School was chosen twice to represent the state of Iowa at the Central States Foreign Language Conference, one at the high school level and one at the elementary level. Administrators, school board members, teachers would come to observe our classes because they wanted to implement these programs in their schools. We were proud of what we had. We had an outstanding program. When I better stop. I would please hope that you would reconsider the implementing, going back to at least 7th and 8th grade Spanish. We know that children learn better. The earlier you start, the better it is. We are doing a discredit to our students.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in.
Hi, my name's Jade Seachy and I'm in 9th grade. I normally don't do public speaking. When I heard about the school board's decision to cut the middle school Spanish program, I felt I had to come and say something, and that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. Count from numbers 1 to 100, Spanish countries and their capitals. How to introduce myself, say where I'm from, pronounce the Spanish alphabet, describe the weather, names of foods, birthdays, months, years, and the characteristics of a person. Those are just a few of the many things I learned while in Spanish class at the middle school. If you talk to any Spanish teacher or native speaker, they will tell you that is basic Spanish. And yes, it is, and it's all learned in our middle school years for a reason, to help us learn and understand basic Spanish before we went to high school. They say everything in high school is harder and advancing onto the things we learned in middle school, and that's what Spanish is right now. In my freshman year, I'm learning about verb forms, ordering from restaurants, buying things, how to talk to other Spanish speakers, and to sum it all up, how to survive in a Spanish country if I were to travel there where no one speaks English. All this stuff that I'm learning now is based on the Spanish I learned in middle school. With the school board's decision to cut the Spanish program, they'll be taking away a middle schooler's opportunity to learn basic Spanish to prepare them for high school to then speak fluently. If I think of the current 5th grade class, they're going into 6th grade next year and will not have any Spanish language exposure and will have to wait till high school to take the language. Without the MS Spanish program, the entire high school curriculum will have to be reworked in a negative way because they will start learning basic Spanish their freshman year instead of getting into more advanced Spanish like I am right now. It's not just the language that we learned in Spanish class. We're also exposed to the Mexican, South American, Spain cultures, that is important for today's youth. With very little diversity that Gilbert has, it's important that we educate our kids about different languages, countries, cultures, and expose them to diversity. I was talking to some of my friends today, and they told me, I don't know what I would do without middle school Spanish. That's true. I don't know what I'd do without middle school Spanish. They have taught me so much. I plan to take Spanish all through high school to eventually become fluent because I believe it is important to learn as much as you can, like this, due to what job I want to pursue when I graduate college. I was also made aware that a financial literacy program would be made instead of Spanish. Financial literacy is good and important, yes, but for high schoolers. It's unnecessary for middle schoolers to learn about taxes, loans, rents, etc. They're just in middle school. That's pressuring kids to grow up and think like an adult too fast. Middle schoolers do not care about financial literacy. They do not have to worry about it. And financial literacy is a requirement to graduate high school. Why should I have to take it twice? I came here to tell you that I don't believe the decision should be made up to the school board. Although I think the overall concept of cutting the Spanish program is a horrible idea, I believe that they should consider student and parental feedback because this is our education that is being compromised. Thank you for listening to my thoughts, and I hope you will reconsider.
She wrote that all herself.
Yeah, very nice presentation.
I just wanted to say a few things. I need to go over there. I learned about this through the grapevine, and I was actually pretty shocked because I have 4 more kids coming up through the system. And I actually, where I went to school, I took foreign language beginning in kindergarten. So I learned French, and I know it had a great impact. I even still remember my French teacher today. But back to Gilbert. So I was actually really upset because I felt like the school board's kind of brushing this under the carpet. It hasn't been really publicly, no notice has been given, and not to mention that no parent feedback was even, I don't think, even part of the decision that was made. So I reached out to several parents and talked to several of Jade's friends and other kids, and they were actually really shocked to hear this as well. So I know, I really hope that you guys can reconsider this program, because my kids in preschool actually are learning Spanish, and my preschooler comes home and says, Mom, guess what I learned today? You know, I learned what the color green was, verde. You know, and then I have conversations all the time with my 1st grader, my 3rd grader, Storm's in 7th grade, all about what they're learning in Spanish. So I just think it's a really important part of the family community, and to educate everyone on diversity. And let's be real here. I mean, we're in America, in maybe 20 years, we're going to have half the population speaking Spanish. So yeah, so you know, I think it really needs to be reconsidered.
Thank you.
Joe, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, it's just looking at the population growth. It's 18% are Hispanic in the U.S. In the last 10 years, half of the U.S. growth is Hispanic. So we're going in the opposite direction that the trends are going. The job opportunities for people who can speak Spanish at the corporate level and outside of Iowa, where I think a lot of the kids will go initially, are going to be there for somebody that has both languages. So I think it's just important, and like this bright young lady said, they can learn all about finance, which I think is super important. I'm glad to see this program at high school level. But in junior high, there's so many other things going on. They're not going to be paying attention. They're learning about coins and stuff in elementary school. But I think this is just a program that needs to be in the junior high school level. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead.
Can I just add something? So I know you guys have listened to a lot of us, like give you some feedback here today, so if I'm drooling. But I know that this forum doesn't lend itself to the proper discussion. And I know that there is a staffing issue. I do want to recognize that it is, part of it is budget and trying to hire somebody. But I'm hoping that we can come up with a creative solution to maybe try to fix the issue and keep the Spanish that we have. Maybe it's just a temporary thing, but maybe like allow room for the possibility of finding other solutions to fulfill that requirement that you can see that a lot of people would like included in the curriculum. Mr. Beecher, I reached out to you and you said that SIAC would be an option for some of these parents to come and have a discussion.
That's correct.
So if we can put an item on the agenda to discuss Spanish, then we would really appreciate that.
Okay.
Can I use my time, or can I just add something?
If you get it done in 2 minutes, how about that?
April 19th this year, this article was in the paper that the state of Iowa just passed a law that will go into effect in July that students can take a test to demonstrate their ability to speak English and another language and earn a seal of biliteracy on their diplomas. There are 26 states that already have this law in place, and there's no extra classwork necessary. They would take their Spanish for 6 years or 4 years or however, 4 years of high school, and then they would have to pass a proficiency test that the American Foreign Language Association. Okay. Oh, it's American Council on the Teachers on Teaching of Foreign Languages. They have a proficiency test that the government uses, I believe, and other institutions. It would be something like that. I don't know what test they would actually use. But this is for employers who are advertising for bilingual people for jobs can get this information off of the students' diploma. Yes. So, and I had not heard of this before. I didn't hear it going through the legislature at all, but I just thought that we could be aware of that. Oh, do you want to see them?
Well, we thank you for all taking the time to come. Obviously, we're all in the same boat on how do we make our schools better, and I really appreciate your advocacy for what you feel passionate about. And certainly, if down the road you want this to be an agenda item, we could talk further about that later on. I know there's some scheduling conflicts for this summer, but we're certainly willing to talk about that in a more formal setting. This is more just to get the feedback, but we're always appreciative of the feedback because that's what's going to make our schools better, and we appreciate you taking the time and the courage to get up and talk publicly. I really applaud your efforts to do that. I know that's I don't imagine myself doing that when I was a freshman. So anyway, thank you guys for coming in.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, any other public forum items to come before us today? All right, thank you, everyone. Okay. Yeah, sure.
Whatever. Can we move him up? He's been sitting there.
Yeah, patient. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. We learned more about Gilbert than you expected, huh?
So I think, did you open that? Did you look at that at all?
I have them.
It's okay. It's pretty. It's not like a power plant, but you just It's going to be like the next page. That's all I have to do. So, all right, so I'm Gilbert Charles, and I teach physics and physical science at the high school, and Mr. Vanderpool asked me to talk on my TQ requirement, fulfillment of my TQ day. And part of my TQ day was spending more time on my ICDP, my individual career development plan, what are the things called. And that was on looking at flipping my physics class. And I'll explain a little bit more of that in a second. So this program is not really meant to be a presentation program. It's meant for a student working through like an online class. So it's not, this isn't really what it's for, but I'm showing it to you because that's what I used to show the class. So when I talked to my staff, my objectives were to meet my requirement for TQ, give them an understanding about what flipping and blending a class was, and then also to share a resource, which is this program that I got from the classes that I've been taking. Next one. So how did I get to this point? John Barbier and I have had some conversations about this. He's got a flipped blended class, and it actually goes back about 10 years ago. When I was probably second or third year in teaching, my dad calls me and says, "Hey, have you ever heard about like this teacher up in Woodland Park?" Because we're in Colorado Springs. He goes, "The guy has his homework in the class, and then like the lecture is at home." My dad always tells me things way before I should think of them. And once again, like, he was right, but I was about year 2 or 3 in my teaching, and I didn't know up from down from teaching at that point, so I didn't even like worry about it. But then I started talking to Barbier, and he was telling me about it, and I was like, why? We went through it, and everything he said, I was like, oh, that makes sense. Oh, that makes sense too. Oh yeah, that all makes sense. So a couple of years ago, I knew I wanted to do it, and I kind of like monkeyed with it a little bit, but then I was just kind of scared, and I wasn't really sure what to do. Go ahead, hit the next one. So I was just kind of like, all right, I need to just dive in. And so there's these classes showed up from the AEA, and I was like, all right, I'm just going to try it. So getting into these classes, there's some options in the online world. So you've got like a fully online class, you've got a blended class, and then you've got a truly flipped class. So I just got done taking an online class from the University of Iowa on the geology of Iowa. So, but that was all online, everything was emailed in, assessments. I had to drive to the old AIB campus to take my final test, and that's fully online, okay? You can blend where, just starting right now, I'm in a blended, one of the last classes through the AEA, it's a blended class where now until June 7, I should be working on my own. June 7, I go to the AEA, spend a day there. June 7 until June 21, I do on my own. June 21, so that's blended, right? So you're doing a little bit in class, a little bit on your own. And then what I'm looking to probably do is a flipped class where you're basically taking what old Malin Hunter had us do and flip her on her head. And so the idea is we want to take where I'm standing up in front of the class blabbing and put that as the homework at home. And then where I'm sending kids home with 10 physics problems that they probably need my help with, or at least a little bit of guidance on, and we're working with that in the classroom instead of using my classroom time of me telling them the definition of this word. They can look that up or they can watch a video of me doing that at home, and I'm there in the classroom. So that's the idea of a flipped classroom. Go ahead. Now, time out for a second. Within this program, so this was meant, not really for you guys, but meant to show my colleagues. This Soft Chalk is the name of this program, and it works really well if I was going to teach an online class, I would probably use this, and I might incorporate it into my flipped class, I'm not 100% sure. So there's a lot of features, and so I was trying to take the content I was trying to show my colleagues and then some of the features. So there's like a little pairing thing, like you can find this matches with this, just like as they're going along. My teachers through the AEA use these kind of like a textbook, like she's got all of her text, all of her content laid out, and then there's formative assessments built in. So you can go through and you can find these and mess with those. It's not anything we need to monkey with. But, so that was the benefits of flipping. So one of the big benefits of flipping is we take the lower stuff on Bloom's taxonomy. We put that at home. We put the higher level Bloom stuff in the classroom, which a lot of times we send them home with the higher level stuff and hope they can do it on their own. And then they're looking up Khan anyway, and they're having Khan Academy show them how to do it. So, which is true. So I'm getting emails at 7 o'clock at night, hey, how do you do this? And I'm like, well, this is really hard for me to explain on an email. But so that's one of the biggest benefits, I would say, is getting the higher level stuff back in the classroom with me, and less of the lower level stuff in the classroom. Go ahead. Might have to scroll up to find it. There you go. So then there's another tool within here. So what do I need to flip? Mostly just one of the biggest things, and actually when I first jumped into it, I was like, well, shoot, this isn't hard. I just video myself doing my lectures. And then I realized that was a really bad idea because A, they got to be really long. I said a lot. It was really boring. It was terrible. And so I tried it this year, and the first one was awful. And then I realized I needed to do more of this to figure out what I was doing. So, but you need to have, like, that's the biggest thing, is you got to get your course objectives, and you got to know what you're actually going on, what you should have as a teacher anyway, right? Decent collecting software, and the trick I had is you got to have something you can edit with. Editing is the key, because you got to be able to cut it up, clean it up, cut it down to small pieces. And the problem is, we as teachers do, is we check for understanding a lot. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
You're looking for that.
I don't need to check for understanding in a video. You just go, because they can hit pause, they can hit rewind. So the videos were really long because while I was doing it, I was doing what I was doing in class and be looking for facial, nobody looked for it. There's no reason, just keep going. Okay? Kids' attention spans are about this big, so you make little bitty videos, boom, 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 boom. You know, check this concept, check this concept. When I first did it, I had like a 15 or 18 minute, 20-minute video. That was stupid. Okay? So the kids need online access, and then you've got to, I just put it there, you got a rocking attitude. Can you see these on your computer screen? Mm-hmm. Click on those. So then if a kid uses these, like he can go and check and see like, oh, did I get their answer right? And then you get to check for answer.
Or just one at a time?
Whatever, check one at all. Oh yeah, good attitude, yeah. So then they can go back and check on, they're all right, so like, yeah. So you can have automatic feedback. So like if they go through and look at something and see what the feedback is. So, there you go. Anyway, so that's just another part of the tools. So you can scroll up or down. There you go. Now, some of the challenges. The access to the internet was one of the biggest ones. So back when my dad was telling me about this, actually this is one of the OGs. This is one of the guys who was in Woodland Park, him and another guy. They were just science teachers in Woodland Park, Colorado, and they just started burning DVDs and cutting up stuff and sending home with their kids. So in the program, you could go look at this and see what some of the challenges were, but I put this in here so you can see that you can embed video into this program. That's why I stuck that in there. So we don't need to watch that, but go to the next thing. Like if you really want to, you can. Okay, so I go back to the top. There you go. Okay, so ideas for making videos. There's a lot of really good information. Keep scrolling. Keep scrolling. Keep scrolling. Keep scrolling. Keep scrolling. I mean, you just, just keep reading. Yep, you got all that right? Keep reading. Keep reading. Okay. All right. Go back to the top.
That's good.
Okay, so within SoftChalk, over that, you can add things like little thought bubbles. Okay? You don't want to do this. Kids don't read it. It's bad font. Okay, just like, kids want to see short, get to the point. We don't want to do that. That's a bad idea. Okay. I don't know which one we're on. Click on. Go back to the next page. There you go. Now, assessment's kind of the tricky part with my Iowa class. Like, I had to set up a time to go to AIB or to Iowa City or to do some stupid thing online or at my house where I had to like walk my computer around my classroom or around my house so that they could see that I wasn't cheating on my test. I was like, I'm not going to do that. I'll drive to Des Moines and not have to this Proctor U. So I could have taken my test at my house, but like I would have had to have my phone where they could see it and a bunch of really weird things. It's very strange. So assessment's the tricky part. If you flip your class, and what I want to do is not so bad because they take the test in the classroom. If you do a blended class, then you have days where you show up once in a while. Then assessment's not too bad because you still got a person. There are some high schools that actually do a blended class where they only show up a couple days a week, and the other days they're like that period they don't come to class. It's online, but they kind of come for a couple hours or something like that. But if you're fully online, that's the trickiest part because it's usually why you don't have an actual test with an online class, just because it's fidelity to it's kind of hard. Go to the next page, please. Then there's just some other random cool stuff that was within Soft Chalk. So click on that. So I don't know. I was doing this for a bunch of teachers, so I was just being silly when I was putting some stuff in here.
I was curious about Danny Jones.
Yeah, me too. Let's
scroll that up. Okay, so this is the timeline of Danny's day. So you have to click on each one of these. Like that. This breakfast, and take clothes. Just trying to keep all my.
He's on next month, you know.
If you can see that.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's just some silly stuff I put in there.
Oh,
delicious.
So, but yeah. So working on in my last class with the flipped classroom stuff from AEA, and I think they told me, and I didn't even know this going in, that I'm going to have, I think, an actual certificate from the state of Iowa to be an actual certified online educator. Didn't know that until the last class I took. She said, "Oh yeah, you're going to have a certificate." So, food for thought. Indianola sent all their teachers through this class that I'm taking because I think they're worried about what the legislature's going to do in terms of funding, where that's all going to go. And I think there's a possibility of some online schools down at least where they're at. And so they're going to have all their teachers be able to have online classes so that they can make their own online academy and not lose tax dollars. Just something to add up here. I'm not saying that I'm wanting to take that job, but I'm just saying that's what they're putting every one of their educators through this AEA class for that purpose. So, yeah, so that's my little Soft Chalk presentation, what I did for my GQ class. So. Questions?
Yeah, this is awesome, by the way. So we buy textbooks or something like a textbook now,
yep.
Right? Like, is there ever a place where we buy that instructional video thing? So even some of that burden might not be on you, or someone with super slick video editing.
Yeah, sometimes, but the research says they want to see me.
Got it.
Little kids want to actually see me.
Yep.
My high schoolers, I've asked them, they don't want to see me. They'll just take weird, snap pictures of me and send it out to their friends. But little kids, they want to have a picture of their teacher on that screen if they're going through something, and they want to hear my voice instead of Khan's. Because they know it's my verbiage. Yeah, they're used to me.
Yep.
So,
if you were to do this next year, would you have the kids work at their own pace, or are they going to be bound by we can't have everybody doing that? Because I think one of the big benefits is the kids they don't have to be bored if they're ahead of it. But I don't know what that would introduce for problems if I was the teacher.
That's where John's is pretty self-paced, so some can get ahead and some can they move like that in his class, and I don't know if I'm ready to let that go or not yet. I think mine would be, hey, have this lecture watched, this is where we're going to go next, and we're going to go here. So I think mine I think is still going to probably say somewhat structured.
Until you get the hang of it, maybe, and see how it
maybe,
goes.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I honestly, I'm not sure. But then with trying to do labs at the same time, stuff like that. So it's where John doesn't have the lab component as much, but I want them to stay with me. So I'm like, hey, we're going to do, we're all going to go out in the hallway and measure velocities and stuff like that or something like that. So it's in its infancy right now. I'm going to start trying to build my videos this summer. I did one this year and it was not great. So they told me that they'll put me on fast forward, which made me think, oh yeah, keep talking. You don't need to hear me go. Stop and think. Just go.
Did they probably thinking
You're fine.
in different directions.
Frank way.
My son does this through our beer.
Using John's
You know,
Website.
yeah, he really likes that. But so, are there opportunities, or does this change, I should say, the number of students that you can effectively teach? You know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
Like, are there some that the videos you've done them so well, you know, they're getting it, they're following along, and maybe they don't have as many questions for you, or maybe in the classroom it's a teacher and maybe I think of teachers like a TA from college, you know, and you had somebody who was
Oh, I
well,
get
you know what I'm
Am I
saying?
making myself go away?
No, and I'm not suggesting that at all. I'm not suggesting that. But, you know, is it an opportunity sometimes when we're faced with classes that might be a little larger than what we like?
Oh, right, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
This is help, I guess is all I'm saying. Does it kind of reduce the impact of, the negative impact of that, or are there opportunities there sometimes?
Maybe, I mean, that would be.
I don't want that to
I'm
be
not
construed
sure.
as at all as.
No, I get what you're
Trying to
saying
do
now.
that, but-
No, I totally get what you're saying now. Maybe, I'm
I just wonder if there's a certain number of students that the videos are just meeting the need.
I think that's something that we do have to, we do have to think about, because we've got lots of different learning styles, and that we do have to balance that, because some kids are going to flourish in this environment, and some kids that isn't going to be.
So.
And some kids that, and so like when Everett was saying, you know, hey, okay, the hands, especially with his labs, okay, now everybody's going to come together for this. It depends on the subject. It depends, like here in this building, you know, we've got our math kids, our 4th and 5th graders are doing some self-paced. But every unit is not self-paced just because of that. Because we know that doesn't fit everybody's style, and we've got to match that. So I think thinking about that and wrestling with how to, and some units don't lend themselves to that kind of learning either. So I think as educators, we have to think about that as to what best meets that needs. And you asked a good question, Brian, when you said, hey, is there something out there that we could purchase? We've got people, believe me, I've got people calling probably once or twice a week, hey, I've got this great system out there. Well, first of all, we've got to vet that, because is it quality? And then it definitely, what Everett said, kids need to connect with him. You know, it's not about, you know.
I mean, there's entire curriculums. You could.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you could. I mean, it already exists. I mean, that's what Edgenuity is.
Yeah.
You ever sat through an Edgenuity? You ever like actually looked at that? It's terrible. So, I mean, it's like we're using the like credit.
Well, that's where you get to student engagement.
That's
because that's the measure. Because I can see us having one class that's flipped and one that isn't, and then you'd say, okay, how are we doing when we measure engagement of that class? You know, we would be able to say, yeah, that's working for these kids. It's not working for these kids. And maybe
Or it's working for both.
And there are some
because
kids
learn differently. Maybe it's a situation where
But
it works for both. Yeah.
But I would see that would be the key as we experiment. You know, it's just keeping that tabs on. Hey, how are we doing for having these kids engaged? Are they really saying, hey, this is working for me, and keep our tabs on it, because then we could say, okay, we tried this. Okay, we need to back up and change it like this.
Yeah.
You know, learn as we go.
Oh no, I agree. And there's and I've kind of polled my kids when I was starting to get into this, and I've asked them, the ones that had John, a high percentage of them like it. And there's definitely a few that would much rather have a person in front talking to them. So, and I don't know if I'm ready to do it with my freshmen or not. That kind of scares me a little bit. Part of me thinks I need to have a little bit more control on that. But with the seniors that I have, shoot, I mean, your dog would be fine, right? Shoot, they're actually begging me for it. I started to figure out a couple of years ago. They're like, I don't need to be up in front of telling this stuff. A lot of them know it already. I need to keep going on some other stuff. So it's part of me, once getting into teaching physics, being like, hey, I need to do something a little bit different so I can move them a little quicker, I can move them a little faster, it's better for them.
Yeah.
So I can differentiate with them a little bit better, the kids that do need me. Because in my physics class, I've got kids that are here, and then I've got, I mean, there's kids that are like, hey, let's go take physics, it'll be fun, it's gonna be hard, I might hate it, but I want to go hang with Charleston. So I've got here to here. So some of these kids can really fly, and sometimes I gotta like spoon feed a few along too. So this might help me do that a little bit better, maybe.
Yeah. So I like this direction, or at least exploring it.
Right.
Two things. One is there's lots of resources down at Iowa State. My wife's professor out at vet school, and she just flipped hers a couple of years ago. So there's lots of resources if you need to continue to reach out and say, hey, how'd that work? What went well? What didn't? What do you think about, in addition to what we've already tried? So don't forget about those resources. Question specific to our situation, and if you did that, then they'd be getting the instruction and video. Then most of yours would be lab, or would you have like
so
more
it
of
would be the lower level basic, like here's your equation, here's the definitions, you know, the stuff that they used to send you home and read it.
Yep.
Kids don't read anything anymore. So then what we started doing is we started filling it in the classroom. Does that make sense? So now what we're doing is I'm sending them home with, instead of having them read the book, they're just watching me spit it out. They can take their notes. So now when they're in my classroom, we're spending our whole time working on problem solving activities, lab, instead of me walking through my notes.
Which by definition almost means they need to be on the same topic.
Yeah, which I think, at least for me, I think I got to keep them, mine would stay
tracking at the same time.
Yeah, we probably stay together.
A third of them racing ahead.
Right.
And depending on class, I think that's accurate too.
Right.
Because there would be some where it's just.
Because I really like the idea of flipping, and it took me a while to kind of understand it, what they're doing at the university. But the key is then what are you doing with them live?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Well,
and it's going to be different based upon the curriculum.
What I found my first couple of years, and I've had to kind of tweak a little bit, is I would send them home with, here's the lesson. So the good old Madeline Hunter, walk them through a couple, yada, okay, now here's your problems, go home and practice them. Well, they're pretty difficult, and the most half of them would not come home done, or they'd be like, I got a couple done, and then I got stuck. So then I was using my classroom time working through problems
anyway.
Right. Yeah. Right. So then it's like, this is dumb. Let's just work on problems in class. Let's come in and I'll put a thing up on the board, and it's like, okay, fight through this.
But they have to do their homework first.
Yeah, but no, that's the trick though. The homework is going to be, and that's where I've got
the basics.
Yeah, and then I've got somewhere instead. There's this program called Kia that I use, where I can have them kind of formative assess, or I can even do it within this. Like they could go through this, and like the video would be embedded in this, and they'd be like, "Hey, open up that." You can work through some stuff. So the holding them accountable to watch the video is like, you can't do this until you've been through that, and that's kind of the trick to some of that. And that's the hard part. Like that's one of the things we run into is just like with kids getting to do their homework. It's just watching a video. So
yeah, we'd have like on the continuing ed, they just throw goofy questions in there so they can prove that you went through it. You know, easy questions, but then that's the demonstrated. That
right, and I'd throw
a
few examples at them or something like that. Or it'd be like, show up with these 3 done. And those are the base problems, and then work on the hard stuff.
I wanted to just share a quick comment. The reason I had Everett come and present this is because I think this is an example of exactly what we want teachers to be doing. Challenging themselves, trying something new, implementing something new, knowing it's going to be messy and it's not going to work.
Yeah.
It's going back to that growth mindset that we expect out of our kids, but we also expect that out of our staff. So try something. If it doesn't work, like we've had several conversations like, Everett explained it, this didn't work. I did this for quite a while and it just didn't work. I went back and redid this, you know, and researching something that challenges you and gets you excited in the classroom, you know, through the support of Carrie in the curriculum area and our administrators, challenging people to do things that are going to continue to make them lifelong learners and get better in the classroom. And that is exactly what we're looking for. So I thought it would be important for you guys to see this as an example. Thank you.
Yeah, no, this is fabulous.
I think it was kind of cool too. It kind of happened organically, right? Like you were sitting there thinking, oh, geez, I'm doing this anyways. Why? I mean, you know, the switch, rather than like imposing something, you must do this kind of a. You looked at, you saw this was a need in your classroom, and you started to investigate.
And it's been more of a shift to speak to that. Is that it used to be, you know, and anybody, Carrie can say this or Mike or anybody that was in education for a long time. It used to be, here's what you're going to do for your career development plan.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you what to do. You know, this is what I want you to work on, and we're shifting more toward what gets you excited. What do you really want to try? What could you implement? What could be meaningful instead of I'm going to pick what you develop, you pick what you develop, and then implement it into the classroom. And sometimes it's multiple years, and sometimes it's, you know, you find out that you spent a year and you didn't make any ground, but you learned a lot, and you try something different the next year. It's just things that can constantly built up.
Yeah, my goal was to have two units done per quarter, per semester. That I realized right away that I needed to do a little bit more work before I could implement it well. Or I was going to end up just making some crappy ones and then starting over and redoing it. So I don't just try to do it right. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great presentation.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That just scares me to death, the thought of like my kids saying that they need help for physics.
Announcements and celebrations. School board recognitions. How about that?
You wanna
Feeling good about that?
Yeah.
You bet.
Good
You
job,
bet.
Tyler.
Don't forget district priorities.
That's not.
Oh, did I pass those?
Yeah.
Oh. We'll come back to those. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll feel a little more empowered after we get done with
There you go. It is School Board Recognition Month, and we'd like to honor those people that are on our board. When I call your name, would you please stand, and we'll give you a little bit of applause here. John Nelson.
Thank you, sir.
Congratulations. Brian Anderson. Yep. Congratulations. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Is this an attendance? Is this an attendance certificate?
Is there any other, we'll finish this agenda item, is there any other celebrations that we'd like to talk about tonight?
I do have one for the board. Aaron Thomas was, on Wednesday of last week, was recognized by the Ames Area Masonic Lodge, number 249, I think, as their Ames Area Teacher of the Year. So recognition of his hard work, and so he was recommended to them. They reached out to me, so they're looking for a hardworking teacher who does well, doesn't get a lot of credit. He's a perfect candidate for that, and so they ended up selecting him, which was a huge honor for him. So
That's great.
Great.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I have two. We had a successful prom. Prom was great, well attended by everyone.
How do you know?
Special shout out to the parents that organized it, the organizing committee. They planned some outstanding activities for that evening for the kids. The kids were super positive and very well behaved and very appreciative of the opportunity to get to spend some time together in a fun, wet, safe way. But it couldn't have been done without the parents and the planning committee. And Zach Hackbarth was recognized, is going to be recognized actually on Wednesday by the Morning Rotary Group as Teacher of the Year. And he was selected as Teacher of the Year. So the Rotary Group picked a Teacher of the Year from a lot of surrounding districts, and Zach was selected for Gilbert. So,
Yeah, awesome. That's terrific. Gary?
Yeah, I did. This is just, we have talked about this, and they, for that Ed Leader 21 conference, they've set those dates. And it's September 26th through the 28th. So, and there is early bird registration, so, and that ends June 25th. So we just want to think about who, I know that we had said, or there was talk of maybe some school board members joining us, so just to think about that so that we can have those numbers so we can get the early bird pricing.
Where is this?
It's in Phoenix.
Oh! Yeah, I'm in. No.
it's not in February or January.
It's not in February, it's in September. It will be hot there at that time. But I think it will be very good learning. So I just wanted to say FYI to that, to look at your calendar so that we can just kind of get that finalized.
Okay.
Just a couple things I would like to add in. Mr. Pizzetti cannot be here tonight. He had a soccer match, and then he was going with another meeting after that. So if you want to take this is something that he wanted me to share. We've talked about this as far as the movement of our school district into the Raccoon River Conference. And this is a letter that I believe that Vic, Tim, and I have received. And I know that the principals and the ADs meet on this a little more than the superintendents do, but I just want to make sure that everyone's understanding kind of where things are going here. We're looking at, I think, the recommendation for the 2020-21. I got to watch how I say that because I've seen people say that in a different way. I want to make sure that you realize that will be happening for us. I think that there's maybe another school possibly, is that right, or so that might be from our conference that might be looking at it. This is just an FYI. I want to make sure that someone hits you up in the grocery store, you know what's happening there. Tim has a lot of the detail, or maybe Vic does if you have any some questions on that. I have this and I'll pass it around. I think I'm just going to let you look at it. The bullseye is what the city would like to do for Gilbert Days and the proposed fireworks, and I think we're moving on forward with that. In case you have some concerns about it, we've done fireworks here before. We actually did them on our property after a football game. Want to let you know that we've talked about this, and I think that we even have some people already in line for this. On June 1st, we will be having our end of the year celebration. Some of you have been a part of that before. I believe that right now Kim is doing the welcome, and I believe that John is doing the closing. That will be at 1 o'clock in the Commons at the high school. There will be a meal, and then what will happen is we'll go into the auditorium and we'll recognize all of our teachers for the different years. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come back out into the Commons and we're going to have cake and recognize our retirees. And there will be like areas where they'll have baskets where if you want to put cards or anything like that in there. And then what will happen is we will go ahead and open it up to the public too, so that they can be recognized. Just an FYI on that, and that's kind of, you guys are some of the first besides the retirees to get that information. That hasn't even gone out to our staff yet. Wanted to just check one thing, an announcement somewhat. We did have a young lady that was in 6th grade that wanted to talk to us, if you guys remember. We got an email from her. And Brian, were you getting back to her?
Yep. So we're going to invite her to come to the next board meeting. That's the one that's in June, right, that starts a little early.
Okay. So I got this email, which maybe you guys did too. Well, I know you guys did because I forwarded it on, but I thought that this is a parent, and then I started to look at it, and it's not. This isn't a parent. This is a 6th grader, and they want to talk about wind turbines and what was it? What was the other one? Solar energy. Solar energy. Just to let you know, we're working through a camp that's coming up. Not a big issue. We're following our protocol there, and I think that's it. I know that's a lot of, just kind of hodgepodge of things, but a lot of things are happening right now.
That's good. And then, Deb, you were going to do the employee or the last day of school. Is that right? That was you and Kim, I think.
My what?
For the appreciation. June 1, because I think.
Oh, I had it on.
Tyler and I were going to do
okay, sorry, we'll make a switch.
Yeah.
Was it you or was it Kim and I?
I don't think it was me.
Oh, you don't think
I think it was Kim and Brian.
Kim and Brian. Okay,
that's right.
Are you going to?
They invited the
I'm sorry, Deb.
You're welcome to do it.
Are you going to do it at the? Well, whoever wants to do it. I don't mean to shut anyone out.
I know Kim just.
Well, we decided on that was the only thing. Yep. Because I know we talked about it. So.
Yeah.
Are you going to close then, Brian, if she opens up? If Kim opens up?
Yeah, I'll do either one.
All right. We'll put you down.
I don't know.
Excuse me.
And let's see, district priorities. Just to let you know too, sometimes I think you guys may wonder, we have like a lot of things going on tonight. We have soccer, we have a kindergarten concert, so we have administrators kind of spread out a little bit here, so if you're wondering where people are at. Anything of the administrators that are here, do you guys have anything that you would like to add to anything that you see up there?
When I printed this on Friday, there wasn't anything red, so.
No,
okay.
we're okay.
So there isn't anything new then.
Okay. So I don't think there's anything, John, for.
Okay. All right, that sounds good. And then, let's see. Okay. Any questions on the district priorities, any board members? Probably the one thing we'll just kind of need to follow up on is that last work session we had on the district priorities that are kind of what we want to do for the long-term, 3 to 5 year long-term planning.
Yeah, I thought I was kind of, are you talking about what, I was kind of charged with maybe helping develop a roadmap? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. So maybe we'll put that on as an agenda item for next month and talk about that. Or we could talk about it under district priorities too. I think that'd be fine, I guess. Let's see here. Student walkout. Want to talk about that?
So Kim wanted that on the agenda, if I recall.
Okay. I don't know. What I did was I tried to check, and I didn't try. I did. I called IASB and I said, "Do you have anything that's out there that would be with the things that have been happening in our society, and you know what's been happening just throughout the nation? Do you have anything that's a policy that talks about student walkouts or anything like that?" And she said no. By the way, she's new. She's been on the job for probably about 2 or 3 weeks. But she said that that's probably going to be something that you will see coming out to you before the school starts in the fall, which doesn't help us now. I know that I can talk to both of the principals back here that were involved in the activities that went on. I think they were very calm, controlled. I think the students handled themselves very well. But if there's a policy, and that's what I think that the big concern is there a policy that we have that directly ties to this? No. We tried to put the policy that we have as far as parents, you guys, whether they're excused or unexcused. We did talk to legal counsel on that, and I got some background as far as thought process there. I don't know, is there something that you're looking for, anyone?
I think from my perspective, at least at a policy level, what I would love is for a simple policy to send to parents when they get frustrated about this thing.
Okay.
What I saw was a bunch of parents' emails that were advocating for a particular political view that they had and not really thinking about a handful of other things that are happening at the school, whether it's an opportunity to instruct the kids, freedom of speech, absences, all of this stuff, which is really kind of the language that we speak. We're not getting into the particulars of the political, component or how these people feel, but I would love, the one thing I thought I wrote as a question to ask, like, while we could wait for the ISB to come out with a policy, we probably can write our own saying how we're going to handle this, so that in the future, we can just say, hey, here's our policy that we stand by around absences, around what we consider reasonable disruption, or I can't remember exactly what our language says now, right? But it basically says, hey, the students are free to kind of protest their things in as much as it doesn't disrupt others in the class. I can't remember the exact language, but it's around that thing. And just to kind of clarify that, so when parents come and say, hey, I can't believe you're letting people walk out because you no longer are serving cheese sandwiches for lunch, we go, hey, this is the policy that covers this thing, right? Or whatever it is. I'd love to see that policy developed. Happy to write that. We can wait on the ISB. I mean, the school year's almost over too, but I just don't want to put anybody here in sort of in the firestorm of people getting excited about political things and then kind of using that energy to talk about it in the school context, which really, I'd like to keep those as separate as possible, right?
That's good thought.
So, I think I agree with you, but the biggest thing out of this last issue that I saw was, let's keep it policy. Mm-hmm. So I agree with you from the standpoint, it's not politics, it's policy.
Yep.
And that's where we need to be really clear on what do we have for policy. I was probably being very simple in my assessment of this, thinking, well, we have an attendance policy.
Yeah.
We do, right? So what does it say? Now, as we get into this, and I think actually policy, I hate to even, you're going to hear this from me, but policy is so important, and it's one of the few things that we're really tasked for uniquely as a board. I wonder if at some point we have a workshop to talk about policy, because some of us can read this and we go, well, it's black and white, and others might go, well, but there's interpretation here. So as we're setting policy and approving policy, I think we need to understand, well, what are the ditches that we just set down, right? So I agree with you. It should, to me, it all needs to be policy. And I'm not saying we need to make more and more policies. We just need to be clear. An issue comes up. What's the policy? And what do we task our administrative team with? Well, they're interpreting the policy. What I would ask from the administrative team is you come to the board, if you go, this is so ambiguous, I don't know where to go. Or I feel like you have written a policy that's so restrictive, it doesn't give me latitude. So that's where I'm saying it might be good to have a workshop at some point. But I agree with you fully. It all relates back to policy. So let's help each other with what is our policy.
Yeah. I mean, our stance so far in the last 2 years I've been working on policy is try not to be prescriptive with the implementation of it, right? And so figuring out, but also Tyler, to your point, like, which is really good, don't be so loose that it could be interpreted 78 different ways, and then everyone's like, well, this is useless.
Because in this example, sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine.
In this example, again, my simple mind would say, what's the policy? And Vic or Lindsay or anyone else that is now implementing that policy should not feel like that's all on them. Take the heat back to the board because it's our policy.
Yeah, we're following board policy.
Right?
Yeah.
That's where it needs to come. Now, we should probably take the policy creation that much more seriously. And that's where I think I would like more interaction with the administrative team on how restrictive or ambiguous is that policy.
Particularly when you see the train coming down the tracks, we need to really, really make sure the policy is what we want it to be.
Yeah, I think the problem is that this particular issue got itself wedged right in the crack between two policies. And we didn't have that third one to kind of bridge that gap. We had attendance, and then we had sort of the right to protest, or whatever our language is around sort of students voicing their opinion. And we had those two things, and there was this like slight crack, and it was just like, ooh, you could read this as a big gap or totally overlapping and covered. And so I think just let's put one more policy right on top of both those things and figure that thing out. I mean, one of my favorite parts of being on the board is wrestling through policy, because it takes every personal issue and abstracts it out to how we're going to handle it.
Well, we can reference the attendance policy as well, you know, in the one policy that unexcused absences will be applicable to that attendance policy.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds good. Okay.
One more thread, right? Or what?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I was jumping to the next topic.
Oh, I was going to say, I think that we should probably sit down. Well, one, if you think it's going to happen before the next school year, then we can wait on the ISBs. Or if we are all so excited about it from what's just happened, maybe we can all sit down one evening and be like, hey, here's our first draft of policy, and we'll go through the normal policy review, which is multiple readings at a board level and conversation around it. I think that's also fair. So again, if we think that the ISB is going to nail it, we're like, yeah, great. I think this is mostly applicable at the high school and middle school.
Yeah, because those are the guys that really had to, that were on the forefront of what was happening.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that your communication was great. How do we just take that and like put it in a policy? And we're like, yeah, and have a healthy discussion. I don't want to just be like, we'll codify, but have a really healthy discussion, because I think you all did a good job on that. There's some tricky stuff, right? And that's the work of the policy. You should be able to handle all the tricks you can throw at it. So I don't know I don't know. I'm kind of looking for guidance. Do we want to wait and we have faith that the ISB is going to handle it, or do we say, hey, we should probably devote a couple hours and draft up a policy and put it through the review process? And I'm looking back to you, because I don't have to implement these policies, right? So to me, we can wait. I'm like, all right, let's see what happens. Or if you're like, no, this is so pressing, and we need to have a real, critical component of this, let's do it ourselves. But I think we should. Well, I would like to walk away from tonight thinking you all have selected. We either wait or we should sit down and write our own.
Can I ask a question? How long does it typically take, though, to get a policy through, all the way through the number of readings?
You have to have at least 2 readings.
Right.
So 2 months.
So, and I want to, I think this is not my decision, but I'm just saying we couldn't get something in place before the end of the year anyways.
The same would be with the ISB, though. So whenever it comes, we'd have to have those double readings as well.
Sure. It's just a matter of when we would start it.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying it wouldn't necessarily be in place, so,
What I would like to do is, IASB has a huge thing with the internet security on their plate. There's a lot of things that they're going to be coming out with that this person, that's their new policy person, is in charge of. I would have no problem calling tomorrow and just saying, hey, what's the chances? This is pretty important to our board. What's the chances of this being done before we start school? If it isn't going to happen, we're going to go ahead and march on our own. And not to say that we're not showing it to them or anything like that. Are you okay with that? And then if they say, well, I can guarantee you that you'll have this by August 1.
Yeah, and if they don't, we can make it an agenda item.
Yep.
You can bring,
Yeah.
idea.
Does that sound okay to you all? I mean, you're the one having to deal with a lot of stuff.
Yeah, from my standpoint, our protest in middle school is the first time in the 13 or 14 years I've been here, so I don't, it's not a regular occurrence. I think we can make do, without certain policy in place, so.
I would suggest we take the initiative and move forward with doing something. I love that, Brian, that you mentioned that when we can always go back to policy and there's nothing vague there, no decisions that really have to be made. I've had some conversations about there is always going to be gray. There is always going to be things that you have to consider along with policy. But, I've received a lot of legal briefs related to this topic. Every district did something. Every district responded differently. Every district has different policy. But the more we tighten up our policy and hit specific things related to these hot button issues, it takes the heat off of where it ends up.
Yeah.
And people are still always going to be upset, and they're always going to be mad. You're going to get 25 nasty emails, you're going to get 50 supportive ones, and you're going to get 25 that go directly to the board and you never see. It's always going to be those things, but we can always go back to say, this is what policy is. And if it's vague, then that's where that wiggle room starts to be a factor. It causes some hard times. It makes it difficult.
Well, I think it's great if we stay on the political fray. You're going to make half the people unhappy, and if you say future walkout, here's the deal. It's not political because this policy was put in place before we were even looking at an issue. I think that'd be great.
Yeah. And if we start, then maybe by the time it's ready to be finalized, we will have had some guidance to say, are we way off? Or if that even worries us, if that even worries us, maybe we feel so strongly about it, that's okay. But
and the last thing, sorry not to belabor this, thank you, Vic, for that. We'll probably have to have some legal guidance on this too, right?
Oh yeah.
Because we are in some hot topics, or this policy is going to intersect some political emotions, and we'll have to kind of figure out those things. So we're going to have to work with some legal counsel, I'm sure, to get this thing written up. But I'd love to see it drafted. So I don't know what's the next step then. Vic, do you want? I'm happy to sit down and talk about it anytime. Kim too. The two of us typically do most of the policy stuff. Happy to sit down and talk about it. However you all want to work it out, but.
I think we can wait to see what Mr. Beecher hears back.
Yep.
Maybe they provide a little bit of guidance and we come together and look at what they've suggested and how we can fit our building. Because every district is different. They tend to write policy for, that fit a variety of districts, but don't always fit our specific needs. But there's definitely room for improvement. And I think it's the charge of the board is to constantly evaluate policy and look to how we can tighten things up and make it a little better. And, it would be much appreciated. I would be more than happy to be involved in any way.
Excellent.
Not that I'm an expert by any means, but...
You're getting more expertise than you wanted, right? Yeah. Okay. Would it be okay, Tyler wants to go to that after the meeting, if we move the agenda to move 503, 507, 514, and 515 up, and we'll circle back?
Sure. What was that? I'm sorry, I was trying to find it.
So grab 503, 507, 514, and 515.
And if there's something else you wanted to figure dialogue on, that's fine, but those are just a few. Can I, just on board reports, to John's point, first wanted to thank everybody for that kickoff a week or week and a half ago. The first project team did meet this afternoon, so I sat in on that, and I think that's going to go very well. There were 3 from HALA plus Adam from Story, and there must have been a half a dozen from the district. And just as we talked about, so talking about where are we starting from phase 2, and now let's talk about what does this look like. The first step is going to be more structural, and then the second step, which will be in September, will be more design. So that one went well, and I wouldn't mind catching the end of this next one since I'm going to be out of town pretty much the rest of the week. So that's an update that I think those are going well, and anybody, can sit in on those if you want. But I feel good that there's good engagement, and already I heard this afternoon some very good positives that gives me encouragement that we won't hear what we heard after the high school, well, we didn't have any input on that. And there was a lot of input.
Sounds great. So is everyone okay with reshuffling those agenda items?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds good. Do I have a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we'll reshuffle. District open enrollment matrix, we're gonna put you through the work, Gail, moving things around. Was there any changes you guys needed to make to that?
The biggest thing that we've tried to talk about right now as we go through our construction process and our bonding process, and it seems like every other day we're calling on something, that the process that we currently have, and it is changing, we're starting to see movement that open enrollment there's movement, open enrollment out as compared to in. The recommendation, though, that I'm hearing is the fact that as the numbers that we have, as we've put this together, is that fly getting you?
Yeah, I just don't want to land on my walk.
Is the fact that changing this right now, these numbers were based on, enrollment projections were based on this matrix, and changing that right now and moving things around is not maybe the best thing to do until we get a little bit better, firmer grasp on where we're going to be overall. I'm not saying that we couldn't, take a look at some of the open enrollment. When we come back to my office and we start talking about that, is I think that we're starting to see some people that are coming out into the new developments that might have the situation where they have kids that are already established in maybe other districts. And so what's happening is, at least that's what I'm hearing. It's not like everyone's just saying, well, I want to open enroll out of this Gilbert district. But I do think that as we look at this overall, starting to change this right now when we've based all of our enrollment projections on this could be a challenge.
When do you think when is the right time to talk about it? That's just an honest question, like I don't have an idea.
Yeah.
But like, is it a year or two?
I don't know. As far as right now, I think that especially when we're basing all of our numbers on this, not this year would not be the time to do that.
This year meaning for the next
For the next year.
Yeah. Okay.
So we look at this every year in May,
Right.
To take any recommendations.
So nothing now, just wait until the next cycle comes along is
Yeah.
what you're recommending.
Mm-hmm.
I gotcha.
But I think, if I recall, we've had conversations where, just as Lindsay's just stated, well, it's kind of cooked now. In other words, May is too late to change this.
You're right, Ted.
Right?
Yep.
So we've talked about doing that right at the beginning of the calendar year, so that we have some idea of, well, if we change that fundamentally such that we add another section in kindergarten as an example, you need to factor that into the teaching staff requirements and all of the financials, right?
Yeah.
So I would agree, now is not the time to change this, but I really encourage us to follow up and do one at the beginning of the calendar year 2019, if not this fall. Because I would agree, I don't have the data other than just the interpretation that we, at one point, close to 100 or 150 enrollment in, and we're now at neutral or almost to enrollment out. I don't think it's an abandonment of the Gilbert School District.
Yeah.
Quite the opposite. I think it's, what I'm hearing is, everybody goes, well, you don't do open enrollment. And I say, well, we do, but you have to hit this matrix. Well, we're full up. We're full up. So I don't know that if we make any changes right now, I think we need to consider what that means at the kindergarten level. And we've had that conversation before, because at some point, we're going to go to that 6th section. That's how we grow. And we're keeping that one really tight. But when we release that one, then it's going to roll through the whole district, right? I mean, that's what happens with enrollment. So I appreciate that we're keeping close tabs on it. I hope there's no negative PR out there that would say, oh, open enrollment out is more than open enrollment in, other than the fact that we're keeping the class sizes appropriate for our kids. And at such time as we have teachers and space, then we can reconsider potentially. And that starts really at kindergarten.
And Tyler's point about when you start to look at this is excellent from the standpoint of May is not the time to be looking at making a change in this, and he's dead on when he says that. If we're going to make a change, we need to be starting to talk about that early. Joe, you've been a part of some of those conversations and some of those figures, and you know what we're talking about here too. It's if we're going to look at something like that, and we will. I've talked to some of the building principals. There's going to be a time where I'll look at Mike back there, and it may not happen next year, but we're going to have to look at a sixth section when we get into our middle. Our middle school's starting to get big. You know, we talked about it in the high school, Vic. What do we set it up? You're a little bit different animal over there, but how do we set it up so that we look at the overall structure of that? But I agree with what he said. I think that we need to continually look at that. I don't have any hard data that says, you know, some people are moving out. I'm just hearing, that's just what's been relayed to me. So that's, you know, not anything that you could, that's scientific or anything like that. But I do think that we want to continually look at that and see where we're at.
So can we put this on to start looking at it in January of next year?
That would be the
Or
latest.
like whatever a calendar or November, whatever that is.
I mean, you're thinking
Even
the
fall.
first of the school year, right? You're thinking July or August. Is that right, Tyler, or not? You're thinking January, or are you thinking beginning?
I'm saying that policy would, or if we're going to change this, that would need to probably be, the latest would be January that we change it, because that would impact the following school year.
So have the discussion earlier.
But have the discussion this fall, or,
Yep.
right.
Yeah.
Joe's here, and I don't know if you were coming specifically for this, but you did a lot of forecasting for us, and you did a lot of modeling of class size. Do you have anything else to add?
No, it's a hard problem. You know, you are where you are, and you know, as things grow, as always been said, you got to figure out when you've got room for the classrooms and you've got a teacher to do it. When you jump the class sizes, or reduce the class sizes, jump the sections. So, no, I have no special insight.
Because if you think about it, we're taking all the growth that we are getting, and by not changing the sections, we're not adding teachers. But at some point, you either compromise on the teacher-to-student ratio, or we start adding a teacher in pretty much at every grade.
Yeah.
And so that's
That's going to be a couple of fun years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions on open enrollment? Anything from the back row on open enrollment that you guys are seeing that you think adds to the discussion? Okay. Commencement plans.
Vic, on this one, what they normally do is they just go through kind of what, I think that the program is already in there. This is his first time through it too, and I know that he's, you know, talking to the different groups and things, but there are 2 board members that are there, I think. I don't know, who's leading up? Is that Tyler? Tyler's going to give the opening, and John's going to give the closing. Is that right?
Yeah.
And like in the past, we've usually got there, you guys are all in the auditorium, all getting ready, and you got your mind on 100 different things. We usually got there about a half an hour ahead of time of commencement. Are you okay with that time frame? Do you want to change anything according to that?
I figure I'll be there all day. So. Whatever you want to show up.
Offering brunch, I thought.
Whatever you want to show up is fine.
Is there anything that's going to be any different, just to let the, okay.
Well, yeah, there's going to be something that's going to be a little different. I'm going to change a little bit on how the ceremony is done, not alter it extremely, but I've tried to make a focus this year on building relationships with students. And I've always felt that it was kind of weird that the high school principal reads the names and doesn't engage with the students as they cross the stage as their last goodbye. And so I'm actually going to have somebody read the names in my place, and then I'm going to be somewhere along the line of the stage that's not going to interrupt the flow of the traffic, to have a last moment, shake hands, and say a few things to the kids as they say goodbye. So I want that focus to still be on that relationship is important. Other than that, it's going to be a pretty standard ceremony. I've been through the script with the senior class leaders and Penny, who kind of knows the ceremony front and back, and it's pretty standard. I've talked with Karen and Byron, and it all kind of just flows in order very nicely, and I don't think there'll be anything different other than where I'm going to be standing and who's reading the names.
All those names will be easy to pronounce, right?
Yeah.
That's always a challenge.
Yeah.
Oh, I think that's a great idea, Vic. Okay, sounds good. The collective bargaining contract, the GEA.
Do you want to bring that up? So you can kind of, I'm not going to read this to you. You can kind of take a look at what it says. The cost of health insurance, it talks about it was 13.28. What we're doing is this is the settlement that we have. They've already ratified through the GEA. This would be for the contract year 18-19. And the proposal would be the new money, fund salaries, total package of 2.81%. That is a total of $243,251. An increase in the base from, and again, I said I wasn't going to read.
It's actually $50 if you.
Thanks. So $50, that's a little quicker. The proposal would also utilize the 2.81% total package allotment with the distribution of the 2017-18 fiscal period. And the eligible lane transfers, we will have those as we get school started, and the insurance package, and then basically the salary schedule A. What else? If something would happen that the state would, and if this would happen, I'd be shocked, that the state would come in different than the amount of greater than 1%, then what would happen is the dollars generated would become open to additional negotiations. And then maintain the TSS distribution of a 70% equally distributed and a 30% index. That's the way it's been quite some time. We have had the opportunity to go ahead and sign off on this, and like I said, the association has approved this. We're just looking for your approval. And did I leave something out? I'm sorry if I did.
No.
Oh.
I just think that, I thought that I just read that 1% was approved, but maybe I was
The 1%, yes.
It's done.
So,
It's
but when
done.
you did this, it wasn't. I don't
No,
think
it was. It's
It
just
was.
a disclaimer that if for some reason they add more money, they want to be able to negotiate the
Gotcha.
additional.
Okay, so that's just
Right.
our standard
Right.
language. Okay, I thought you were saying.
Yeah, no, it is.
We did that. I thought that was approved.
I don't think there's any more money out there.
Yeah, they're having trouble right now with what they're doing.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any questions on this? We were able to meet in our opening proposals here.
How many times has that happened with you?
Only one other time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Good.
That's
Yeah,
excellent.
good, transparent communication.
Yep.
Well, need a
there's-
motion to
You betcha.
approve.
You betcha.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
Sorry, yeah.
All in
You're
favor,
right.
say aye.
I'll give it a
Aye.
chance.
All opposed?
No.
Stands approved. And then salaries for at-will employees.
That's which number is
So my
that?
we don't need to read through all this, but my question is, it seems like we continually have need for bus drivers and
Yep.
needs
Yep.
for food
So we
service.
tried,
So just, I mean, do you feel like we're addressing that with this such that we can be competitive and fill those needs? Or?
I hope so. Last year we tried to up the cooks, kind of make that so that we were able to handle things. This year it's the custodians. And you can kind of see, Gail, do you just want to talk a little bit about that combo situation?
Our
there?
beginning custodian is $10.50. There is no way
Yeah.
we can get anybody,
Right.
let alone somebody that has family. So we did started with a comparison of the area schools, and $13 was a pretty good average. There's some above, some below, but $13 seemed like something that we could start with and live with. But then you were left with, okay, what about everybody that's here that are at 10.50, that are, at 11? So we came up with, okay, years of service. And so we went through and we broke it up, and we met with Kim and John, and we kind of broke it up in 2 tiers. And 1 to 5, if you're here 1 to 5 years, you're going to fall in around 13. We added this year a 25-cent bump if you're going to take that night shift. If you're here until 10, 11 o'clock at night, just additional boost to getting people employees. And then the second tier is 6 to 10 year. And then everybody after that, we really didn't have an issue with if they were here past that. There was already a big enough gap that we didn't need to address it. So going in further, you know, we'll know that, okay, from this point forward, when we hire somebody, they're going to be at $13. So it gives us, you know, something to measure on. And it does you know, when we go to tell the employees, when Steve meets with his employees and says, okay, this is our reasoning. You know, this is what we decided to do to make it as equitable as we could. And it's always tough to do this, very tough to do this. So we started with custodians this year. Last year was cooks, this year's custodians. Next year, we'll probably have to visit paras. We visited that about 3 years ago. And so we pick an area every year, just about. The other thing we do is to keep those salaries up is we don't do a total package on at-will. The teachers get a total package. And so that includes the increase in insurance. With the at-will, we do 2.8, the package 2.81 just on the salary, just to keep that salary, that minimum, the hourly up there, and so we can keep it as competitive and not fall behind. Now keep in mind that these people most of them do get a single health insurance that did suffer a 13.28% increase. But overall, our at-will employees are a smaller chunk total than our teachers. So that's what we currently do.
And you know, all you have to do is drive downtown Ames and see that everyone's trying to hire. You know, John's been a person that's been on this negotiations part for a while, and we've talked about this. We talked about it with the cooks, what we need to do, because everyone's looking for people in the food service industry. We talked about it with custodians, you know, as we're looking at trying to hire when someone leaves or whatever, and we just have to be competitive, and that's what hopefully, thank you for the help of John and Kim and Gail on this committee as we looked at this, that we're moving in the right direction. And that hopefully answers your question, Tyler, that we are trying to address some of those issues. Because it is competitive, you know.
Yeah.
Bus drivers, we just need people to get their CDLs. We need bus drivers, and it is so hard. We're getting a few. I think one stopped in the other day. I think as an ex-county sheriff, so I mean that was good. So
that's around there.
That should be a test.
And that may not be pay related as much as just
and we've talked about that because there's just a shortage. So basically, you're not gaining anything when you do, you know. And we did address that with those activity routes. We need people to run those activity routes, and so we're concentrating on keeping that competitive. So we have people driving those extracurriculars in the evening to relieve our Bruce and our route people that don't like to do that evening. So we need to get other people to do those. So.
Okay. Any other questions on those?
Do we need to approve that, or is that part of the?
That's part of the consent.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good.
I'm going to dismiss myself to the facility meeting.
All right.
Thanks, Tyler. Yep.
Okay, so now we have to switch on and off.
Yeah, you got to stay away from.
Yeah. So I think we're back to 501 according to my field, and I guess is there anything in there that you need specific discussion items on? Because we could take 501 and approve them with one motion if everybody's comfortable with that. But if there's anything you need to pull out, we can do that as well.
Okay, so let me write that because these are legal documents, I need to make sure that Tyler's not listed, so he left.
Okay.
Will it matter then? Do they need to go through them on a step-by-step basis, or can they?
It's going to be two people on the motion.
Yeah. I just need to make sure I don't include Tyler because he left on the. But yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Are there specific things, Lindsay or Gail, that we need to talk through? I mean, a lot of it is it's
Mostly
things that we want.
contracts.
Yes.
It's mostly
Yeah.
contracts, yes.
Now, when you get down to, these were the couple last items. I and J, construction, 501I and J. Now, these are construction related, but we've had to put them on the agenda because they were over $10,000. And we have board policy that says anything over 10,000 needs to be brought to the board. So, and so they're waiting on that for approval tonight so they can act on those right away tomorrow.
So you'll start to see the soil boring, the soil testing that will be done, and the surveying. They want it with Snyder and what is it, Snyder and Associates? Yeah, they want to get going on that. So those are some things that they've thrown in there. They're not cheap, but we know that.
Yeah, I got those Friday morning, so we went ahead and had those on there.
And the other two that I just point out that as I went through all those agreements was I believe the legal was around 20,000 and the Piper Jaffray for the bond issuance was around 30,000 for the cost on the legal and the bond issuance. So I wanted to point that out to the board.
I think S&P, did you include that was 17? Is that part of your legal? Or did
I
you
didn't
not?
see that. That was just
Yes,
ours,
S&P
I
was
think.
17.
on
So
top
you
of
get
that.
all these,
Yeah.
it's like
These
your
are-
minds are just like,
yeah.
oh my goodness,
Yeah.
so costly.
It's pretty expensive.
Yes, it is.
And it's been a hectic, crazy week, how much time is going, we've had 2 conference calls.
Takes a lot of time, doesn't
Due
it?
diligence,
Yeah.
and then we had to have a rating with S&P, and the great thing was it was a positive.
It was very
Everything
positive.
that we talked about, that financial model that we had, we are right on target. They saw that what our plans are, they have an idea, we are heading in the right direction. So it was up to date, and we were referring to the financial statements that are tonight, and everything's on track.
Those,
So
just so,
it was,
those financial statements just make it so much easier.
Yeah. so anyway, I have nothing more than I had. So
No, I don't think
that's
so.
fine.
So I entertain a motion to approve 501 items A through J. I'd entertain a motion for that.
We're all looking at
I second it.
No, you have to.
What?
You say so moved.
So moved, sorry. I wanted to second it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it. I have the courage.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? They stand approved. Okay, the YSS mentoring program.
We've had it in the past. It's a good program, and I would recommend you approve it again.
I'll entertain
So
a motion
moved.
for that. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It is approved. The FCCLA Leadership Conference.
We've had this where we sent them to the summer conference in the past. I believe, I want to check with Vic, don't we have someone that might be an officer? Go ahead.
We have a district officer.
Okay, so we've done this in the past. I think it's just another a form of the leadership that we actually provide for our students and would recommend approval.
Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I will second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Stand.
By the way, I love that kind of stuff. Sorry, we don't have a lot of time for conversation, but I like watching our kids go and represent our district and talk about things. It's so
Yeah,
cool.
she had to go through an application process and was selected, so.
Yeah, no, it's really, I don't want to, I mean, we're moving fast here, but those sort of things are so cool.
Vic and I, just not to slow us down, but Vic and I had an opportunity to go down and watch the FFA conference, one of the student leadership, and boy, you talk about some great things going on there
Yeah.
too. So there's a lot of great things that are available for our kids.
I saw your
Costa Rica trip.
Do you want to say anything about this? I know you talked to your instructors. They've done this every other year. This is going to be a little bit different because it's going to be a science Spanish. Is that right?
Yep, it's kind of a dual trip, so kids that are interested in the cultural piece and the agricultural science piece also combine together to have a wonderful cultural and science experience. So it sounds like an excellent trip.
Entertain a motion to approve that.
So what are we approving? Just
The
that
Costa
we're-
Rica.
No, but I mean, like, just that we're going, do we
You're
fund
allowing
it?
them to
Do
go.
I-
Do
oh,
you want to be a
we're still allowed
sponsor?
go. Shouldn't there be a reason? No, I don't want to be
Or
a sponsor.
chaperone?
Nope.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. All opposed?
Oh, sorry, aye.
Stands approved. The graduating senior list. Anybody want to make a motion to approve those folks?
Anything there?
I think I better see the list.
As long as you show up for the next 2 weeks and pass their class.
I love the middle names. Some of those middle names are great.
Yeah.
The the ones I don't want to see us fail the motion on, this is the one.
Wow.
So do you need to say so moved?
Yes.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I will second that.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, stands approved. And let's see, student fees, is there any questions on any of the student fees there?
I think I added, we did a, a survey, and so that's what we based our opinion on when our our recommendations. So the recommendation is in red, and so basically it's a 5-cent increase on lunches. The adult is set by the state, so we didn't have a choice on the 365. Everything else was 5 cents for nutrition, and then the school fees. I believe, didn't we decide? I did not hear back from Karen on band cleaning and vocal cleaning. It was 10, and we checked it. It seemed like $10 was going to work for another year. So that was the average was 11, but it seemed like $10 was okay. So we're going to leave it at 10. The middle school yearbook had an increase mid-year, and so we need to reflect it to go to 20. So, and then Mike is going to add a middle school planner as an option, so that'll be $4. That's going to be new this year.
Move approval of those fees.
Well, sorry, one question. We are going up by 5 cents on the nutrition items. That's our legal limit, right? Like we only can go up 5 cents a year.
No,
right?
we can go up as much as we want. Yeah.
I didn't think that was true. Okay.
Yeah. So we do find out if they've changed it this year. If you have money in your nutrition fund, which we do,
yeah,
that we can decide how much we want to increase it.
Okay.
If you have a deficit, then they're going to tell you how much you can increase it. So,
got it. Okay.
But
You want to go out more?
no, I just couldn't remember.
and we did this based on our area, the area
Very
schools.
interested into these numbers here. No, this is great. Thank you.
This guy keeps track of his milk money.
How does that, do you know how you got the,
Says the banker. Says the banker. Good.
but there's an email that just came out about two $1,000, was it not a grant? Was it a grant? Like an award that are in middle school?
Oh yeah,
It was in our report. It was
So-
in the nutrition, in our food service report.
Yeah, and so does that money go back to that, how do they use it? Is that back to their
Actually-
fund or?
Actually, that's just flow-through money.
Okay.
We get it, and then we need to expense it
Okay.
for materials and educational materials for the
So
lunch
they
round.
use it for, I think they did that
For
in
materials.
fourth grade at a nutrition program. or something.
Usually it's posters and just educational-based materials on nutrition and healthy meals, healthy lifestyles, something like that.
So moved to approve this.
Great, second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, stands approved. Story County Educational Consortium.
We've been a member of that. John Kinley is our contact there. Would recommend approval.
Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Have a second?
I'll second.
Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, stands approved. Purchasing agreement with the AA.
Again, we do this each year. We recommend approval.
Entertain a motion.
So moved.
We'll have a second.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, stands approved. Credit Recovery Pilot Program. This one stumped me. I couldn't remember what this one was.
DCAT grant.
This is the one that's in Vic's building. Bob Taronis, is he the one that has it?
Correct.
So they go through DCAT. DCAT money is getting tighter and tighter. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure if we're going to have it for
This
next
is our last year.
Okay.
Okay.
What does it stand for? Does it?
DCAT, I don't know what DCAT
Well, it's
stands for.
through juvenile court, and there's a whole bunch of different entities that pull from this pot of money.
But it's something that
Basically,
needs to be bought.
related around at-risk clientele to try to support students that come have at-risk backgrounds.
Okay. So since this is the last year, then next year we'll have to.
That's something we're going to need to think about if we
Think
want
about.
to kind of continue those services in our building. We're going to have to be able to fund those.
Yeah.
That's right.
And that's, what is that? It's basically one person's salary for a year, or are there other
No,
resources?
it's an hourly.
It's 3 hours. He
3 hours.
He does 3 hours a day for about 15 hours a week.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry, and then on top of that, is it curriculum or online services, or it's just this one?
Provides credit recovery opportunities.
Well, whatever.
Yeah,
Whatever.
yeah.
Things that doesn't fall through the cracks.
Does, Vic, doesn't it happen that, we are ones that benefit from this through our program, and does Ames have one too, do you know?
You know, I don't know who all gets.
Okay, I just thought they did, but it's a good program.
Every district has different pots of money that they pull from for these types of things. I know there are a handful of schools that get this money. You know, I don't know how the shares are distributed. I don't know enough of that. I know it's designed to support students that struggle to come from more at-risk backgrounds.
Yep. John just said to me though, as this funding gets cut, we want to make sure that as we're looking at administrators' prioritized list and things, you know, does this fall into like our at-risk, some of our at-risk funding that we may want to look at? Does this fall into something else? You guys know what I'm talking about. So.
Entertain a motion to approve that program.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Stands approved. The next item is the district audit services. I think we have a recommendation to go with Nolte Coleman.
You want to talk a little bit about that, Gail? Or I think that this is pretty important as we looked at this and talked about it in our office where we go.
Nolte is who we've had for a long time, and we do a 3-year service agreement with them. And so I sent out to all these different audit firms, and we only received 2 bids back. And this Anderson Larkin, they did call me. They are just starting to branch out, and they only have 2 districts. I know they're less expensive, but going through the capital projects and all the bonding, Nolte, our auditors play an important role and a part of our paperwork tonight that we're approving. So I would feel best, and I have a great working relationship with Nolte, and they are a great support, that I would rather have no change at this time.
And this is for 3
years.
So then the next time maybe less going on. Maybe
depending on,
I think she makes good sense when she says that. Right in the middle of a bond, you know, or construction and things like that, I don't know that we want to change. So I would recommend the same thing.
Entertain a motion to approve those folks for our audit work with Nolte.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second, no. What would you do if I didn't?
I'm going to go buy milk.
I felt like it was just expected.
I go buy discount milk after this.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Appreciate it.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Stands approved. Let's see, we got that. Getting close. We need the middle school contract for shared music. We need an approval of that.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
This is Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, Mrs. Johnson rocks.
Second.
Yeah.
That was the easy
Excellent.
one.
Yeah.
She's excellent, everybody.
Likes the,
I was just messing with you.
All in
See,
favor,
anytime I have any power.
signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Stands approved. And financial report summary.
Made it to page 2.
How about that?
You said Piper Jeffrey liked all these.
Yeah, but it's great. I love
You know
it.
what, I misspoke.
Uh-oh.
More fun than the milk money.
Uh-oh.
I misspoke. We do the 515, the at-will employees. I
Need a
was looking
motion
at
for
my
that?
work papers. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
so
not
separate.
part of the, it is separate.
Okay, we'll entertain a motion to approve.
The at-will.
Which agenda item is that?
It is 515.
515.
Some of those items that we were just talking about.
Yeah, I'm
Yep.
sorry, I didn't realize
Yeah,
that.
Compensation. Got a first from Deb.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye. You're so efficient.
All opposed? Stands approved.
Make the school board just 3 members.
And financial report summary.
These, I really don't have any issues with them. We are right on target, like I was saying earlier.
That's awesome.
Year to date, we're right on target. We have monthly revenue is below budget, but it was mainly because of property taxes, and we can't control that when people pay property taxes. So it's a little bit below what we would wanted it to see. Monthly expenses or below, which is good, or below budget. Year to date's below, And year-to-date variance, we are at $277,000 gain for expenses and budget.
That's including the lacking,
Yeah.
the lacking property tax?
Yes. So
People are delinquent, that's great.
We would be aware.
And so basically at this point, our budget, if we finish out the way we are, we should have $185,551 an ending balance of basically more revenue than we expensed. So, and then our spending authority on line 33, I touched a little bit about that. Conclusion, we are continuing to have strong cash balances in all funds. PEPL, so with saying this, I had transferred $3 million to an ISJIT bank account that we have, and we've had it. We've only had like $6 in it since I've been here. And it was just an open, this is Iowa School Trust, Iowa School Joint Investment Trust. And we are currently only getting 0.4. And I deposited it on the day it was 1.4. So what I'm really interested in, they have this rolling CD of a 30-day rolling CD, and you have to have a minimum of $3 million. The reason why I didn't put it in there because of all of our construction and everything's going on. I'm not sure about. I have with this $3 million, I can shuffle money back and forth when you need it. I don't think we're even going to need this $3 million, but I thought let's start there. And as we see what we have and we sell bonds, that 1.8 would be probably a good place to put some of our money.
And I see in the proposed legislation, you could go up to 5-year certificates.
Oh.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Interesting.
So anyway, and this, we already had an account. We already had an account with them, so it was just a matter of just transferring money over. So that was, I decided we needed probably to put our money elsewhere. So other than that, that was the only thing that I wanted to mention, and that's why I went to that. Otherwise, I won't. If anybody has any questions,
Why did we ever land on that? It wasn't our decision, I don't think, to make, but on that TIF. Remember when we talked about that?
That was just informational. So we'll have an agenda item if we have to weigh in on that.
But it's not really our vote.
We're really not a player in it because I thought maybe John was going to say something about that tonight when he was here.
That's a city.
But I mean, it's really, so
it would
it's
just
not.
be, we could be supportive of it.
Right, and I think that's what they're going to look at too.
Yeah.
But we know what that would mean. That's one question I remember we talked about it at one point, but if that were to be approved by City Council, that meant what dollar difference for us?
I don't think
about that.
Very small.
It was small.
Very
I know
minimal.
that was small.
Very minimal.
Yeah.
But it's not actually, and the interesting
Because
thing
there was
on that
other
is
stuff
it's
that was-
only the growth part of it. We remain, where we're at. So it's just the growth part of our.
That we would lose on it. So we don't really lose money.
We don't really lose,
out on
we
an
just are
opportunity.
held harmless basically, and then it's the growth that will be delayed.
Okay.
I think it was really
It was
to put away any concerns that, you hear a lot about that being
I thought it was good. We all heard
problematic
it.
for schools.
Yeah.
So I
heard
think
a lot,
it relieved my concerns that
I think because it's so
individual.
limited in Gilbert, I think it's not.
Okay, and then lastly, the consent agenda. I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda unless there's any items you want to talk about or pull off of there.
Just one thing, there's tons of personnel changes. I've read through all of them. Anything that we need to talk through on any of those personnel changes? There's just a lot, tons of coaches, but then there's some shuffling too of our teachers.
Right. Administrative team, we met on Friday, and one of the things we talked about is there anything that you think needs to be pulled out here? And I don't think that there was anyone that said anything, myself included, that we needed to pull anything out of there. Now, if you have a question, by all means, you can ask anything. But do you guys have anything that you think needs to be pulled out from your end of it? I didn't hear anything the other day. Carrie's got a lot in there too, I think. With their TLS.
There's a couple that were 17 and 18, like Micah is going to be based this summer. This summer's baseball. And there's another 17, 18. Kale Jensen is going to be baseball this summer. Everything else is for next year.
Yep. Do we find someone to replace for the counselor in the intermediate building? Because she was leaving, right? I don't know.
You want to explain what's going on there, Mr.
Yes,
Danson?
so Amy stole my counselor, basically, no. So Natalie Wilson, who I hired this past year, is shifting over, and so I'm currently looking for a middle school counselor.
Very cool. I like Mrs. Wilson a lot.
Yes.
Sorry to you, but awesome for this building.
Keep the talent.
Thank you.
Keep the talent. Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
And there are no fundraisers.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Yep, second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Stands approved. Calendar, what do we got for calendar items?
Remember that June meeting?
June 1 for
Tuesday.
the student, or for the last day of school.
Oh, yep, yep.
And then, what are we on, June? Did we move
Twelfth.
that?
The date of the next.
June
yeah,
12th.
Which is a
5.
Tuesday.
4:30, I think.
4:30?
Is that what you guys have?
Yes.
4:30 start time for that?
June 12th. I don't know why I
You still
wanna say
bringing
the
pizza,
14th.
John?
You bet I can bring pizza.
You need to borrow some money at the gas station again?
All this. I'm gonna buy it with the milk, savings on milk money, is what I'm gonna do.
The bid opening is at 1 o'clock that afternoon. The bid opening will be at 1 o'clock.
Oh, so we'll be able to hear, and that was the nature. What were we moving that up for?
Bid opening.
The bid opening?
The
Oh, we
reason-
need to be there for that, okay.
Yeah.
To
The
accept
bid
the
opening is, we decided to move it on Tuesday because I guess for scheduling, there's so much that happens. He thought it was best for our district to have it on an
That's
odd
how
day.
they do the bonds, because that's a Tuesday.
That's right.
All right, any other dates the board should be aware of?
Does have anything to add?
And the project leaders are reaching out to their people to schedule those meetings separately.
That was one of the
I
things
feel
that
like I'm on a project.
you
I'm
are.
not sure.
You're on a couple of them.
Yeah. I better check
You
my
didn't get an
calendar.
invitation to a
No,
meeting?
no, I'm sure I did.
Okay.
I
Yeah,
need
they
to
was sent out an
Find it, yeah, to make sure I don't
Sam-
miss it.
Sam sent them out, the invitation.
Sam did.
Sam said from,
That's a good start, because then now you know to start
Yeah.
for Sam.
You're on one of mine, aren't you, Deb?
Yeah.
Yeah. so
Middle
if-
school,
Sam,
I
one
thought
of
the high
yours too,
school
Beck?
did too.
Yeah,
That
that-
were
If you want this after this, I can give you the.
Okay,
So-
thanks. I think I just lost it.
Okay, well, I will, is there any other business to come before us this evening? Joe, you're the only one persevering.
Yeah. He just wanted to see if he could do it.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Technically, you're the only
Good job.
person I-
Yeah.
I'm impressed. I thought we'd be here until 11.
I know, we're
That's a long agenda.
Well, I read
Well,
through all
John
those.
might be because he has all that.
Well, I went
paperwork to
through all those
sign.
legal documents. I'm like, they're not going to generate any.
No.
Good to move.
That's
John
good.
has
Other
learned
than,
now.
there's a lot of paper in there that we got to do.
Oh, thank you.
Deb, ours is.
Oh, yeah.
You're on the, are you on, you're on the
Yeah.
classroom, correct?
Yeah,
Wednesday the 23rd at 3:05.
okay.
Is that,
At 3:05 at the middle school, like, is it here or that?
it's at the middle school.
Yeah, gotcha.
Is that workable for you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll make it work.
So,
Do you happen to know when the high school
Thank you for
is?
doing all that.
Yes.
yeah.
You feel good?
For the classroom
I need-
edition.
Oh, I mean,
Yeah.
that's
I'm
not
gonna shut that down.
Yeah.
That
Let me turn it off,
is,
sorry.
No, that's fine.
just a second. I'm trying
Do you
to-
get that fly?
Sure.
These are
Just-
big.
I-
Start
I
clearing
decided-
table
Fine
things.
Arts edition at the high school, or is that the same as the classroom edition?
The Fine Arts edition